This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of
enough. You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price that you can get Truefire All Access for.
Okay, I had a question on a live stream from Will, who has sent me an email chasing me up on this. Thank you for that, Will. And I was going to do a video. So he's a guy who uses a looper live, and he was saying he's having trouble with kind of his lead tone just being a bit brittle. So I kind of wanted to explore some of this stuff and see if I could come up with some ideas here. He actually uses a Line 6 Catalyst. Now I went and got my Line 6 Catalyst CX out of the loft, went to plug it in, it made no sound, sort it out Line 6. So in this video I'm using a Katana Gen 3, but I think they're roughly sort of kind of equivalent, and you probably know what to expect. You know, sometimes with these amps it's like, you know, the cleans are pretty good, and then you plug something into it, lead tone, you're like, that's not quite what I wanted. So I kind of wanted to just do that with you, if that's all right. So let's see. I'm starting off with just a clean tone. I've just got an SM57 in front of the cab here. I'm not really trying to make anything sound super polished or anything, so this is going to be a bit of a raw video. Okay, so one of the things that he's doing is, so I'm just sat on a patch cable, that's not really my kink. This is just a normal booster. This was loaded for Bear. I don't think they exist anymore, but anyway, it's like one of the few boosts that I have. So you can hear basically I'm starting off with a clean preset because, you know, you're going to be looping, you're going to be wanting things to actually be clean to keep clarity of the loop. You're not going to be running an amp on edge of breakup, right? So then when I kick this on, everything falls off. Good. Anyway, I don't know what you can hear there, but it's kind of spiky. If I get further up, right, so in that top end for me, it's got like a little bit of that ice picky thing going on, right? So that's one thing, that's just with a booster. The other thing he's got is a Keeley Super Fat mod, which is basically a Boss Blues Driver derivative, right? Kick it on. So if I had the level about unity, as I add gain, if I want more gain, so this is kind of the thing I think happens here. The more gain that you add, the more spikiness you get in the top end. Now, one thing to sort of combat that a little bit is that you might instead have more level on the pedal and less gain. Which gets you something. I think it gets you a pretty decent tone, but as you start to get, like now I've got quite a lot of level, quite a lot of gain. But does it have as much sustain as I might like? Maybe not. If I get the gain. That's with the tone already at about 9. The more gain that I have, the more I want to turn this tone down. So I think that for me is the thing. You've got a trade-off in feel. If you want more sustain, you essentially more gain is what you need, and a compressor, a boost, all of these things seem to add a little bit more gain. But the trade-off is that in the top end, this is where this kind of brittleness comes in, I think, where it kind of starts to get a bit fizzy. And so I think really either you find a drive that has qualities that you like, the Dude, the J-Rocket, the Dude, where you can sort of do a more high-cutty type behaviour on the tone, or get yourself an EQ pedal and then kind of experiment with what it is that you want to hear. So if I've got kind of, so just start flat, I guess. and sculpt your tone in that way. To me, that gives you kind of the best of both worlds, where it's like the Blues Driver or the Keeley Super Fat mod is going to have oodles of gain in it, but it might not be exactly the right kind of tone profile for you. If you have an EQ pedal, like the Blues Driver is actually surprisingly versatile. It has oodles of gain, and an experiment with each of these. Like that's a super ice picky tone, right? 3.2K. So maybe I could tame that one out a bit. What's 1K sounding like? That's like a bit more of a nasally. What's 800? Important mids part, what's 400? That's like throatiness. So if I dial in a bit more of the throatiness, so there's a little bit of kind of brashness to it that if I take the 6.4K down, and it suddenly feels like it's a bit more of a sustaining tone to me, a little less brittle potentially, and obviously you could dial these things in however you actually like. Then on the amp itself, what I would consider doing would be to keep the presence a bit lower. If I take the presence is at halfway here. If I'm using a clean amp, I will generally run that presence like down. So keep presence off. You can maybe take the treble a little bit down and boost the mids a bit. So now I'm sort of like that with middle and treble. Which has done a similar thing to like the EQ pedal. So to the point where it's now maybe too much. So just experiment with the amp settings as well. Then also, a bit of reverb, or quite a bit of reverb, can really help. And I think that for me is a little bit of a key part of my tones, is that I actually have quite a bit of reverb at home, which kind of gives that illusion of sustain. Then also, obviously, and I think really Petrucci would be the guy that I got this from, delay. Still brittle without that EQ. And I heard Misha Mansoor say this, you know, using the right amount of gain for the part. Now, if you were using humbuckers, playing a different style of music, not necessarily, you know, all of these things would be totally different. And this is entirely down to taste. But if you're needing the part to sustain more and you're not finding that you get it, maybe you turn up the gain and sort of make some more adjustments. This is exactly what the EQ can help for. Fizziness is really going to be accentuated by the gain being as high as possible. Now, I don't know how that's going to sound over the microphone, but in the room... And if I've got an EQ there, I could even boost into the front of the blues driver if I need even more gain. And that's the important part here, though, is that this is entirely going to be about taste. And the blues driver obviously can sound like a lot of other things. Like, it could be a beautiful kind of lower gain boost. If I use that EQ on that. And, you know, even in that case where I'm using less gain, I could even boost certain frequencies more, like 6.4K. And one thing that might be a bit counterintuitive, sometimes it's not going to be the highest slider that is kind of your offending frequency. once 3.2K is out of the way, 6.4 actually adds a bit more kind of nice air. I think, yeah, this would be the route that I would experiment with, because your catalyst can do the reverb thing, your catalyst can do the delay thing, you know, adding reverb and delay, but you can't without, I think, a bit of EQ. With these kind of pedals, I think you need to do a bit of sculpting with this kind of digital amp, in my opinion. I think it would probably be the same with a lot of tube amps as well. There's nothing that an EQ wouldn't potentially help with. You know, I say, you know, people might talk about compressors in this light or other drive pedals, but I think actually when you hear what you can do with an EQ pedal and a drive pedal, I think that to me is like the most obvious first choice that I'd be talking about if you're finding your lead tone to be brittle or, you know, not enough sustain live. You've got a boost pedal, you've got a drive pedal. This kind of problem is going to exist, I think, with most drive pedals, where it's like, actually, I want more gain, but as I turn up the gain, it gets kind of brittle, spiky. I think EQ is the answer. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, I'm not sure how this is going to sound in the video itself, but in the room, certainly if I want less of a brittle sound and more sustaining, more singing, the EQ pedal fixes that better than, you know, just going out and buying a new drive pedal. And you probably find that you can get some more interesting results from an EQ pedal than you might be expecting.